Close your eyes now and let your breath gently deepen, like the slow, steady tide of a quiet sea. Tonight, we travel not to a distant star, but to a world that once shone with an almost unbearable brilliance, yet held within its heart a constant, flickering shadow, the Roman Empire. Imagine, if you will, the beating heart of this colossal world, a palace vast and sprawling, shimmering under the Mediterranean sun. Its marble halls gleamed, cool and silent, echoing with the soft rustle of silk robes and the distant murmur of voices. Tapestries woven with scenes of gods and heroes adorned the walls, and golden lamps cast a warm, dreaming light upon polished floors. Here, power resided, absolute and magnificent, shaping the destiny of millions, with a single word, a single gesture. Yet, beneath this breathtaking veneer of grandeur, a different kind of current flowed, a silent, unseen river of whispers and suspicions, winding its way through every corridor, every banquet hall, every private chamber. For even in the very lap of unparalleled power, there dwelled a subtle, persistent guest, fear. The fear of betrayal, of ambition's sharp edge, of enemies both distant and terribly near. And in this shadowed landscape of imperial anxiety, a most unusual figure emerged, a silent sentinel whose very existence was a testament to the fragile nature of even the most formidable authority. We speak of the Emperor's food taster, a name that sounds almost humble, perhaps even quaint, when whispered now in the quiet of your room. But in those ancient, opulent days, this was a role steeped in a peculiar kind of dread and an unspoken, profound bravery. What unseen duties, we might wonder, lay hidden in the quiet corners of such immense power? What silent sacrifices were made, day after day, in the name of an emperor's safety, and indeed the stability of an entire world. Imagine now, the soft glow of dawn filtering through the high palace windows, awakening the city to another day. For our silent sentinel, however, the day often began not with the promise of a new beginning, but with the quiet dread of a potential end. The morning meal, and indeed every meal thereafter, was not a moment of pleasure or sustenance for this individual, but a meticulously choreographed ritual, a high-stakes test. Picture the scene, a magnificent table, laden with dishes of exquisite beauty and tantalizing aroma. Roast game, perhaps, glazed with honey and herbs, its skin glistening, bowls of colorful fruits, plucked from distant lands, arranged like jewels, delicate pastries, their subtle sweetness perfuming the air, goblets of wine, ruby red or golden amber, sparkling in the lamplight. For anyone else, this would be a feast for the senses, a celebration of abundance. But for the food taster, it was a tableau of potential peril. With a calm that belied the churning in their stomach, they would approach the table. Perhaps their eyes would first scan the dishes, searching for any subtle discoloration, any unnatural sheen, any faint, metallic scent that might betray a hidden danger. Their senses, honed by constant vigilance, would be exquisitely attuned. They would observe the steam rising from a hot dish, looking for anything unusual in its vapor. They might even watch the servants' hands, their faces, for the slightest tremor or flicker of guilt. Then, the moment would come. A small portion of each dish, carefully selected, would be placed before them. Not a lavish plate for enjoyment, but a series of precise, measured offerings for evaluation. With a steady hand, they would lift a morsel, perhaps a delicate piece of fish or a sliver of roasted meat, to their lips, or a tiny sip of wine, held on the tongue, allowing its flavor to unfurl, not for pleasure, but for detection. The sensation would be immediate, vivid. The complex spices, the rich textures, the nuanced flavors, all registering on a palate trained not for gourmet appreciation, but for the stark clarity of survival. For a few agonizing moments, they would chew, swallow, and wait. A silent prayer, perhaps, would pass through their mind, a quiet plea to the gods of chance and fate. Every tickle in the throat, every fleeting ache in the stomach, every faint tremor in the hand would be scrutinized, magnified 1,000 times. Was it just the rich food, or was it the insidious tendrils of something darker taking hold? This was their daily bread, this silent gamble with destiny, each meal a potential gateway to excruciating pain, to a swift and brutal ending, or to a slow, agonizing decline. Consider their silent bravery. This was not the valor of a warrior on the battlefield, charging into the fray with sword in hand and adrenaline coursing through their veins. This was a deeper, more insidious courage, the courage to face an unseen enemy, to invite death into their own body, day after day, for the sake of another. The sheer weight of this responsibility, this unique burden, must have been almost unbearable. To stand as the final, living barrier between a powerful ruler and an invisible assassin, to knowingly risk all with every single bite. What thoughts filled their mind as they sat there, waiting? Did they think of their family, of a home they might never see again? Or did they simply focus, with an almost meditative intensity, on the flavors, on the sensations, on the subtle chemistry unfolding within their own flesh? This was a role that demanded not only courage, but an extraordinary degree of self-control, a profound understanding of one's own body, and perhaps a quiet acceptance of the grim possibilities that each meal presented. For the emperor seated at the head of the table, this ritual was meant to bring a measure of peace, a fragile shield against the ever-present shadow of treachery. But even with a taster, could true peace ever truly be found in a world so steeped in ambition and fear? The mere existence of the food taster was a stark reminder of the pervasive dread that permeated the very air of the Roman court, a fear that gnawed at the heart of even the most powerful man in the world, a feast of fear and suspicion, served daily. And so, in this world of opulent shadows, the daily ritual unfolded, a silent drama where life hung by a thread, and every bite was a gamble. But what, we might softly ask, were the unseen dangers against which our silent sentinel stood guard? What insidious arts, what forgotten knowledge did the ambitious and the desperate employ to weave their deadly tapestries? Imagine the quiet study of ancient poisons, not always a swift and brutal end, but often a slow, creeping decline, a subtle unraveling of mind and body. The Roman world was rich with knowledge, some of it benevolent, much of it steeped in the darker arts of manipulation and control. Herbalists, apothecaries, and even certain physicians held within their grasp the secrets of plants and minerals that could soothe or destroy. A whisper of hemlock, perhaps, derived from a delicate flower, capable of silencing the breath. Or the metallic glint of arsenic, tasteless and invisible, mimicking the symptoms of a natural illness, leaving behind no obvious trace but a profound and sudden quiet. Could it be that some poisons were designed not to kill outright, but to slowly dim the emperor's vigor, to cloud his judgment, to subtly warp his perception, turning a once sharp mind into a confused echo of its former self? A slow-acting venom, introduced over weeks or months, perhaps in a morning draught of wine, or a sprinkle of powder in a favored spice. For the taster, this presented an even greater challenge. How does one discern a gradual erosion of health from the vibrant immediacy of a lethal dose? Their task was not merely to detect death, but to sense the very approach of illness, the insidious tendrils of decay disguised as a simple malaise. Think of the sources of these dark concoctions. From the distant shores of the East, travelers brought back strange botanicals, their properties unknown to the common Roman. Within the empire itself, the alchemists toiled in their hidden workshops, seeking not only the transmutation of metals, but also, perhaps, the perfect, undetectable agent of demise, a knowledge passed down in hushed tones, from master to apprentice, shielded by secrecy and superstition. In the cunning of the poisoner, oh, the depths of human ingenuity, when driven by malice or ambition. A subtle smear on the rim of a goblet, dissolving with the first sip, a tiny capsule baked into the crust of a pastry, melting invisibly as it warmed. A perfumed handkerchief, its scent a gentle lullaby, leading to an eternal sleep. Our taster, then, was not merely a consumer of food, but a living instrument, a human divining rod. Their training, though unwritten in any official scroll, must have been rigorous and relentless. Perhaps from childhood, selected for a heightened sense of taste and smell, for an unusual resilience of body, or a peculiar calmness of spirit, they would have learned to distinguish the authentic, robust flavors of the earth from the insidious bitterness that might betray a hidden danger, to recognize the faint, almond-like scent of cyanide, or the metallic tang of lead, even amidst the rich perfumes of a Roman feast. Their palate would have been a library of sensations, cataloging every nuance, every subtle shift, not just the 5 primary tastes, but the thousands of ethereal notes that dance upon the tongue and nasal passages, the whisper of an unusual spice, the faint stickiness left behind by a strange oil, the slight burning sensation that lingered too long. And beyond taste, their entire being would become attuned. The subtle tightening in the chest, the sudden chill, the racing of the heart, the faint dizziness that could precede a collapse. Every nerve ending, every tremor, every shift in their internal landscape, meticulously observed and cross-referenced with the food just consumed. This was a life lived on the precipice, each day a delicate balance. What kind of person could endure such a profound, constant state of vigilance? Perhaps they were fatalistic, embracing their role with a quiet resignation. Or perhaps they found a strange strength in their unique position, a sense of purpose in being the final, living filter for the most powerful man in the world. They would have been an anomaly, an outsider within the very heart of the palace, privy to its deepest secrets, yet always separated by the invisible barrier of their perilous duty. And what of the emperor himself? How did he view this silent shadow who stood between him and eternity? Was it a relationship of cold practicality, a necessary tool in the machinery of power? Or did a strange, almost spiritual bond form between the two? The emperor, surrounded by sycophants and schemers, could only truly trust one pair of lips, those of his taster. This reliance, this absolute dependence on another's body, must have created a unique intimacy, albeit one born of fear. Imagine an emperor, perhaps weary from the burdens of state, looking across the vast table at his taster, waiting for that subtle nod, that unspoken signal of safety. In that moment, a flicker of something beyond mere duty might pass between them, a shared understanding of the precariousness of life, of the heavy crown, and of the ultimate vulnerability of all flesh. For the taster, there was the profound awareness that their own suffering, their own potential agony, was the price of the emperor's continued existence. A silent pact, sealed not with words, but with shared breath, shared food, and the ever-present shadow of the unknown. Could it be that some emperors, knowing the daily risk taken on their behalf, felt a pang of something akin to gratitude, or perhaps even a quiet dread for the soul of the one who stood in the path of their doom? Did they ever offer words of comfort or acknowledgement? Or was the taster's role too grim, too much a reminder of their own mortality, to be openly discussed? We can only imagine the unspoken dialogues, the silent exchanges that transpired in the opulent halls between the man who commanded an empire and the one who risked everything for his next meal. A curious dance between absolute power and ultimate sacrifice, played out daily under the gaze of watchful eyes. Now, let your mind drift further, beyond the shimmering marble halls, into the very heart of the silence that followed each meal. For what became of these silent sentinels, these living filters of an emperor's fate? Did they simply vanish into the annals of forgotten names? Or did their lives, in their unique way, leave an unseen legacy? Imagine the two paths that stretch before them, stark and unyielding. The first, a swift and brutal ending, a sudden collapse at the table, a gasp of pain, a final, shuddering breath. For those who tasted the poison, their sacrifice was immediate, undeniable, a grim testament to the silent war waged daily within the palace walls. Their bodies, perhaps, removed discreetly, their names whispered only in hushed tones, becoming a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the ever-present danger. In this tragic outcome, their legacy was a moment of profound revelation, a grim victory for the emperor, who, seeing their demise, would know to avert his own. A life given, not in glory on a battlefield, but in the quiet, agonizing surrender to an unseen foe, for the sake of another's breath. But what of the other path? The path of survival, day after day, year after year. For these individuals, their success was not marked by triumph, but by an enduring quietness, a life lived perpetually in the shadow of potential doom. They would return to their humble quarters after each meal, the ghost of a metallic tang, a subtle bitterness lingering on their palate, a phantom sensation that might never truly fade. How did they sleep? Knowing that the next dawn brought with it another round of this perilous game. Each ache, each minor illness, each subtle shift in their own body chemistry would be magnified, scrutinized, a constant nagging question. Is this the day? Is this the slow, insidious work of a poison that finally found its mark? The psychological toll must have been immense, the quiet erosion of the spirit. To live with such profound, constant dread, to invite death into your own being, day after day, year after year. Their lives were a paradox, crucial to the emperor's survival, yet utterly expendable. They were privy to the deepest secrets of power, yet held no power themselves. They tasted the finest delicacies, yet never for pleasure, only for vigilance. Could it be that their very existence was a form of slow poisoning, a constant seepage of anxiety into the very core of their being, leaving them forever changed, forever watchful, even in the quiet moments of their own lives? Perhaps they found solace in a strange fatalism, an acceptance of their unique, solitary purpose, a quiet dignity in their daily dance with destiny. As the centuries rolled on, whispers of such figures began to seep into the wider tapestry of history, blurring the lines between fact and legend. Though specific Roman names often remain elusive, for theirs was a role shrouded in necessary anonymity, we find echoes of these silent guardians in the accounts of chroniclers. Xenophon, the ancient Greek historian, speaks of the Persians' meticulous precautions against poison, describing official tasters for their kings. It was a practice so ingrained in royal courts that it seemed a natural, if grim, accessory to absolute power. Could we imagine a young man, or perhaps even a woman, in the court of a Roman emperor, chosen for a heightened sense of smell, a keenness of taste that bordered on the preternatural. Perhaps they were slaves, their lives deemed expendable, yet their unique gift made them invaluable. Or perhaps they were freedmen, bound by an oath of loyalty, their fortunes tied irrevocably to the emperor's breath. Their stories, if they were ever truly told, would have been hushed, confined to the inner circles of power, never meant for the public ear. For to acknowledge the constant threat was to admit the fragility of the empire itself. The power of their silence was profound. They were living secrets, walking repositories of unseen dangers. Their very existence was a testament to the fact that even the most powerful ruler lived in a cage of fear, protected only by the willing sacrifice of another. These individuals, known only to a precious few, became symbols of the unseen battles waged in the kitchens and dining halls, battles far more insidious than those fought on distant frontiers. Their anonymity, paradoxically, made them legendary, figures whose lives were a quiet, constant drama of vigilance and unspoken bravery. This shadow of the taster, however, was not confined to the marble halls of Rome. It stretched across continents and centuries, a testament to the enduring human fear of treachery. From the opulent courts of ancient Persia, where the king of kings was protected by a hierarchy of tasters, to the medieval castles of Europe, where lords and ladies feared the touch of a poisoned chalice, the role reappeared again and again. Imagine the grand banquets of a Holy Roman Emperor, where every dish was first presented to an official taster, often a trusted nobleman, his life a silent pledge to his sovereign. Or picture the intricate rituals in ancient Chinese dynasties, where emperors relied on skilled individuals to detect the subtle discolors of a poisoned meal, or even to test their bathwater for subtle toxins. The methods evolved, from simple tasting to the use of specific minerals or even animals believed to react to poisons, but the core fear remained the same. It was a universal dread, a dark thread woven into the tapestry of power across all civilizations. The taster, in whatever form, became an essential, if tragic, part of the machinery of state, an ever-present reminder that power, while absolute, could also be profoundly fragile, and ultimately deeply isolated. And in this recurring need for a food taster lies a deeper meaning, a profound contemplation on the very nature of trust, power, and human vulnerability. What does it say about a society, a ruler, when such a role is not merely a custom, but a necessity for survival? It speaks of a world where trust has eroded, where loyalty is a currency easily bought and sold, and where paranoia gnaws at the edges of even the most magnificent empires. The emperor, at the pinnacle of power, was also, perhaps, the most vulnerable, his very life dependent on the vigilance of an individual whose name we may never know. The food taster, then, becomes a poignant symbol. They stand as a testament to the loneliness of absolute power, the constant suspicion that must have plagued the minds of those who ruled. Their existence highlighted the ultimate fragility of life, even for those seemingly beyond mortal reach. In a world where a whisper could be deadlier than a sword, and a meal could be a final judgment, the taster was the ultimate human shield, a living, breathing barrier against the insidious darkness of human ambition. They remind us that even in the grandest displays of authority, there is always a quiet, vulnerable core, susceptible to the smallest, most secret acts of malice. As your breath deepens, and the images begin to soften at the edges of your mind, consider these silent guardians. Their lives, often forgotten, leave a lingering echo, a quiet lesson from the past. They reflect the timeless human anxieties about betrayal, about hidden dangers, and about the profound cost of power. There is a strange beauty in their quiet tragedy, a dignity in their unwavering duty. They stood, day after day, between life and death, between trust and treachery, allowing a world to turn, an empire to function, for just one more day. Their story is not just one of Roman emperors and ancient poisons, but a story of human courage in the face of the unknown, of sacrifice in the quietest of forms. And as you drift deeper now, may you find peace in the knowledge that some brave souls once stood guard, allowing others to simply eat and to simply sleep, allowing others to simply eat and to simply sleep. Yet, even with these silent sentinels, the shadows of ambition did not always retreat. For the cunning of the human heart, when steeped in envy and greed, could find ways to bypass even the most vigilant of guardians. The Roman world, for all its splendor, was a crucible of ingenuity, and sometimes that ingenuity turned towards the darker arts of destruction, seeking pathways beyond the mere palate. Imagine now, not just the laden banquet table, but the very air of the imperial chambers, the garments draped across a chair, the gentle fragrance of a perfumed oil. For the fear of poison was not confined to food and drink alone. What if, we might softly ask, the danger lay hidden in the very essence of comfort and luxury? A beautiful silken robe, perhaps, woven with threads subtly imbued with a slow-acting irritant, its touch bringing not warmth, but a creeping fever, a persistent rash that slowly weakened the spirit. Or a favored unguent, its sweet scent masking a volatile compound that absorbed through the skin, could dull the mind or send the body into a restless, agonizing sleep from which it might never fully awaken. Could it be that the emperor's personal attendants, those who dressed him, bathed him, or even prepared his writing implements, became unwitting conduits for unseen dangers? A quill, dipped in ink, laced with a subtle narcotic, causing tremors in the hand and confusion in thought. The bath, seemingly a moment of luxurious relaxation, infused with fragrant herbs that in truth released a vapor, slowly stealing the breath from the lungs. The paranoia, once focused solely on the meal, would expand, seeping into every object, every interaction, turning the very fabric of daily life into a potential minefield. This expansion of fear meant that the emperor's circle of vigilance had to stretch beyond the food taster. What kind of quiet experts, we might muse, were tasked with discerning the integrity of a new toga or the purity of a fragrant oil? Perhaps there were those who specialized in the subtle chemical reactions, the faint discolorations, the unusual textures that might betray a hidden contaminant in everyday objects. Their methods would have been rudimentary by our standards, relying on keen observation, perhaps the careful testing on animals, or even on other, less fortunate souls. A constant low hum of suspicion would permeate the very air of the palace, transforming every gift, every new acquisition, into an object of potential dread. Consider the story, perhaps more legend than fact, of Mithridates VI, the king of Pontus, who lived centuries before the height of the Roman Empire, but whose shadow loomed large over its fears. So consumed by the fear of poison was he, that he reportedly ingested small, increasing doses of various poisons throughout his life, hoping to build an immunity, to become, as it were, a living antidote. This practice, known as Mithridatism, was a testament to the pervasive terror of treachery by stealth. What if, we wonder, some Roman emperors, hearing such tales, harbored secret desires for such a personal, unshakable shield? And what if, in their quest for such an ultimate defense, they looked to their tasters not just as a barrier, but as a source of knowledge, a living experiment? Could the food tasters themselves, through their constant exposure, have developed a strange, acquired resilience? Not a full immunity, perhaps, but a heightened tolerance, a deeper understanding of the subtle effects on the body. Their bodies, in a perverse way, becoming laboratories for the very poisons they sought to detect. This idea adds another layer of quiet tragedy to their role. Not just a single sacrifice, but a life lived on the edge of chronic low-grade poisoning. Their internal landscape subtly altered, forever marked by their unique profession. They would have been walking encyclopedias of sensation, their very being a testament to the bitter knowledge of what lurked beneath the surface of beauty. Yet, despite all these escalating precautions, despite the silent sacrifices of the tasters, the diligent scrutiny of objects, and the ever-present paranoia, history reminds us that no emperor was truly immune. The most elaborate defenses could be breached, the most vigilant eyes could be deceived. The deaths of emperors by poison, or suspected poison, punctuate the annals of Rome like dark punctuation marks. Emperor Claudius, for instance, whose final meal is shrouded in mystery and speculation, with whispers of poisoned mushrooms, or a feather dipped in venom, lingering to this day. His death, whether by natural causes or insidious design, serves as a potent reminder that even with a food taster, the seat of power remained perilously exposed. The very fact that such tales persist, that we still whisper about the methods and the victims, speaks to the enduring grip of this fear. It suggests that no amount of vigilance, no number of tasters or guardians, could fully quell the deep-seated anxiety that gnawed at the heart of absolute power. The emperor, for all his dominion over millions, remained a solitary figure, encased not only in opulence, but also in an impenetrable shell of suspicion. Every smile, every gesture, every offering became suspect, his life a constant performance of strength. While privately, he relied on the daily quiet gamble of another's life. And in this profound solitude, this ultimate vulnerability, lies a peculiar kind of psychological burden. For the emperor, the presence of the taster was a constant, stark reminder of his own mortality, of the precariousness of his position. It was a mirror reflecting the darkness within his own court, the ambition and malice that seethed just beneath the surface of loyalty. How could one truly relax, truly trust, when the very act of eating, the most fundamental human need, became a calculated risk? The lavish feasts, meant to display wealth and power, were transformed into somber rituals of survival. This ongoing drama, played out silently day after day, year after year, shaped the very atmosphere of the imperial court. It fostered a culture of extreme caution, of veiled communication, where a misstep could be fatal. The silent sentinel, the food taster, became not just a protector, but a living embodiment of this pervasive tension. Their presence, a constant, unspoken question: who among us truly wishes harm? The answer, always hovering, always uncertain, made every interaction a delicate dance, every moment a potential turning point. So, as you continue your journey into the soft realms of sleep, let these images linger gently in your mind. The shimmering palace, the laden table, the silent taster, and the unseen dangers that lurked in every shadow. It is a tale not just of ancient Rome, but of the enduring human struggle between trust and betrayal, between safety and fear. The memory of these silent guardians, though their names are often lost, remains a powerful echo, reminding us that even in the grandest displays of authority, there is always a quiet, vulnerable core, susceptible to the smallest, most secret acts of malice. And as the empire eventually faded, as all great powers eventually must, the memory of these daily, silent battles, fought with every bite and every sip, echo through the very foundations of the empire, a silent tremor beneath the marble and gold. For the constant presence of the taster, and the fear they embodied, cast a long shadow not only over the emperor's plate, but over the entire imperial court. Imagine, if you will, the subtle shifts in human behavior when every meal, every shared cup, every offering held the potential for betrayal. How did this pervasive dread reshape the intricate dance of power and loyalty within those ancient, opulent walls? Consider the courtiers, the senators, the ambitious generals who thronged the palace halls. Each one, keenly aware of the taster's role, was perpetually reminded of the emperor's vulnerability, and by extension, their own. It created a climate of suspicion, a delicate tightrope walk where a misspoken word, an unguarded glance, or a perceived slight could be interpreted through the lens of potential treachery. Trust, that fragile glue that binds societies, must have been in constant short supply within those gilded walls. Who could truly be a friend when every hand that offered a gift, every voice that spoke praise, might harbor a secret, deadly intention? The very atmosphere of the palace would have been thick with unspoken anxieties. Banquets, meant for celebration and the forging of alliances, could become tense, watchful affairs. Guests might subtly observe the taster, holding their breath perhaps, until the all-clear was given. This constant vigilance, this deep-seated paranoia, must have drained the very vitality from the court, replacing genuine camaraderie with a veneer of polite, watchful distance. Could it be that this internal erosion, this quiet fracturing of trust, contributed more subtly to the empire's eventual decline than any barbarian horde at its gates? An empire, however vast, is only as strong as the bonds between its people. And when those bonds are constantly tested by the specter of treachery, the core begins to weaken. And for the emperor himself, the weight of this universal suspicion must have been unbearable. He was, in essence, the loneliest man in the world. Every eye upon him, every word addressed to him, filtered through a lens of potential threat. The taster, while a protector, was also a living, breathing reminder of this profound isolation. What comfort could truly be found in opulence, when a simple meal required a proxy for death? His closest advisors, his most trusted generals, even members of his own family, could never be entirely above suspicion. This forced distance, this inability to truly unburden his heart or relax his guard, must have been a crushing burden. What dreams, we might wonder, haunted the sleep of an emperor who knew that his next meal could be his last, and that even his most loyal servants might be unwitting pawns in a deadly game? Did he ever long for a simpler life, a time when a morsel of bread could be eaten without the shadow of a silent sentinel? His power was absolute, yet his peace of mind was utterly dependent on the vigilance of another and the absence of malice in the hearts of those around him. A profound paradox. The most powerful man, also the most vulnerable. His life, a daily gamble against the darkest impulses of human nature. This reliance on a human shield, this necessary ritual of sacrifice, also speaks to a fascinating aspect of Roman legal and cultural thought. While poisons were certainly used and feared, there was also a profound sense of fatum, of destiny, that permeated Roman life. Could it be that the taster, in absorbing the potential doom, was not merely a practical defense, but also a symbolic figure, a kind of scapegoat who absorbed the malevolent intentions, allowing the emperor to continue his destined path? Their death, when it came, was not just a tragic end, but a confirmation of the emperor's preordained survival, a dark, sacrificial rite played out on the stage of imperial power. Imagine the quiet despair that must have settled upon those who served in such a court, where the very air was thick with intrigue and the emperor's life hung by a thread, protected by another's sacrifice. It was a constant, low-level anxiety that permeated all interactions, subtly shaping the conversations, the decisions, the very character of the empire's leadership. When survival itself becomes a daily, public drama, what space is left for innovation, for genuine connection, for bold and confident governance? The focus shifts inward towards self-preservation, away from the grand visions that once built an empire. And so, as the centuries wore on, and the grandeur of Rome began its slow, inevitable descent, this internal rot of suspicion and fear, epitomized by the food taster, may have played its own quiet, insidious part, not with a bang, but with a gradual erosion of trust, a weakening of the social fabric, a deepening of the isolation felt by its leaders. The external threats were vast, but the internal vulnerabilities, the silent battles waged in the dining halls, perhaps proved just as corrosive. The empire, for all its might, was ultimately human, and thus susceptible to the deepest, most ancient fears of betrayal and hidden malice. The stories, the legends, the quiet echoes of these silent sentinels continued to ripple through time, shaping the narrative of power and vulnerability for centuries to come. Even after the last Roman emperor had faded from memory, and the marble palaces lay in ruin, the image of the food taster remained a potent symbol. It was a reminder that even the most formidable authority is ultimately fragile, a human construct vulnerable to the smallest, most secret acts of malice. The fear of poison, and the desperate measures taken to avert it, became a recurring motif in the courts of kings and queens, czars and sultans, long after Rome had become a whisper of history. This enduring legacy speaks to a universal truth, that power, particularly absolute power, often comes with an unbearable solitude, a profound distrust of the world it seeks to command. The food taster, in their quiet dignity and profound sacrifice, embodied this truth. They were the living testament to the fact that the gilded cage of ultimate authority often held within it the most potent of fears. And as you drift now, deeper into the quietude of your own thoughts, let this image of the silent guardian gently dissolve, leaving behind only the soft, lingering wisdom of their story. A story that reminds us that even in the grandest displays of human achievement, the most profound dramas are often played out in the quietest, most vulnerable moments. Between a single bite, a single sip, and the silent breath of life itself, a single bite, a single sip, and the silent breath of life itself. Yet beyond that fraught moment, that delicate balance between life and death at the emperor's table, lay the quiet, often unexamined existence of the taster themselves. What became of the man or woman whose palate had just danced with death, yet survived for another day? As the rich aromas of the feast faded and the imperial court dispersed into the soft hum of evening, the taster would retreat, not to revelry, but to a different kind of vigil. Imagine them now, in their own quiet chamber. Perhaps a simple room tucked away in a less opulent wing of the palace. The luxurious silks and glittering gems of the court were absent here, replaced by the stark reality of their unique profession. The silence, so comforting to others, for them might have been heavy with a peculiar kind of listening, an internal monitoring. Every subtle sensation within their body, every faint tremor, every passing ache, would be scrutinized with an almost clinical detachment. Was that a slight tightening in the chest, or merely the lingering effects of a rich sauce? Was that a fleeting dizziness, or simply the exhaustion of constant vigilance? Their body was not just their vessel, but their instrument, their most precious tool, and it was a tool that had just been pushed to its very limits, tested against the insidious cunning of human malice. Not all poisons, as we've mused, were designed for a swift, dramatic end. Some were crafted for a slow, subtle decline, a creeping malaise that mimicked natural illness. For the taster who survived, this meant a constant, unsettling uncertainty. Could they be harboring a slow-acting venom, a quiet invader that would only reveal its true nature days or weeks later? Their very physiology became a battleground, a silent laboratory where the effects of unknown compounds might slowly, imperceptibly unfold. Over years, their bodies might subtly shift, developing a strange acquired resilience to certain toxins, a kind of internal armor forged through repeated perilous encounters. Or perhaps they might become exquisitely sensitive, their senses so finely honed that even the faintest, most harmless deviation from purity would trigger a cascade of alarm. Their internal landscape, forever altered, would bear the unseen scars of their profession, a quiet testament to the silent wars they had waged within their own flesh. This life, lived perpetually on the precipice, also cast a long shadow over their social existence. Who could truly befriend a person whose daily duty involved inviting death? They were essential, indispensable, yet fundamentally isolated, not quite a servant, for their very life was deemed precious enough to be a shield for the emperor. Not quite a noble, for their role was born of fear, a grim necessity rather than an honor. They existed in a unique space, privy to the deepest secrets of power, yet always separated by the invisible barrier of their terrifying duty. Courtiers might offer polite nods, but a deeper connection, a shared meal without the unspoken tension, would have been almost impossible. The taster was a constant, living reminder of the treachery that lurked in the shadows, a silent, unsettling presence that spoke volumes about the court's underlying paranoia. We might wonder, too, about their origin. How were such individuals chosen for this most perilous of roles? Perhaps they were slaves, their lives deemed expendable, yet their unique sensory gifts making them invaluable. Or freedmen, bound by an oath of loyalty, so profound that they willingly stepped into the path of death. Could it be that some were even selected as children, their palates and senses honed from a young age through a brutal, unconventional education, a relentless training in distinguishing the subtle nuances of flavor, the faint whispers of danger hidden beneath the surface of beauty? Their teachers would not have been scholars of philosophy, but perhaps seasoned apothecaries, herbalists, or even other aging tasters, passing down a grim, practical knowledge of survival. They would learn not just to taste, but to feel the food, to understand its subtle energies, its potential to heal or harm, to recognize the insidious bitterness of certain plant extracts, the metallic tang of heavy minerals, or the strange, numbing sensation that preceded a rapid decline. Their lives were a testament to the fact that even the most specialized and vital skills could arise from the most desperate of circumstances. The emperor, for his part, must have viewed his taster with a complex mix of emotions. A cold practicality, certainly, for the taster was a necessary tool in the machinery of power, but perhaps, too, a strange, unspoken dependence, a fragile trust that transcended the normal bonds of master and servant. This was the one person whose life was literally put on the line for his own, day after day. In the deep, silent moments, when the emperor looked across the table at his taster, waiting for that subtle nod of assurance, could there have been a flicker of genuine gratitude, or perhaps a profound, quiet dread for the soul of the one who stood in the path of his doom? The taster was a living mirror, reflecting the emperor's own mortality, a constant, unsettling reminder of the profound vulnerability that lay beneath the gilded trappings of absolute power. This reliance on another's body, this ultimate physical intimacy born of fear, must have created a bond unlike any other in the vast, impersonal hierarchy of the Roman court. The court, too, observed the taster, but through a different lens. For some, perhaps a grudging respect for their silent bravery. For others, a sense of unease, a reminder that death could lurk anywhere, even in the most innocent of dishes. The taster was a living cautionary tale, a stark warning to any who harbored treacherous thoughts. Their presence at the table was a powerful, wordless statement about the emperor's vigilance and the steep price of ambition. Yet, there must have been whispers, hushed conversations among the courtiers about the taster's fate. What would happen if they did fall ill? Who would be next? The very existence of the taster fueled the pervasive paranoia, creating an atmosphere thick with unspoken anxieties, where every smile could be a mask, and every gesture a potential threat. What of the rare, agonizing moments when a poison was almost missed, or when it caused a non-lethal, but clearly debilitating reaction in the taster? Imagine the sudden, icy panic that would grip the imperial table. The taster, perhaps, clutching their stomach, their face paling, a faint tremor in their hand. The swift, silent removal of the offending dish, the immediate summoning of physicians, the frantic investigation into the source of the danger. These were the terrifying close calls, the stark reminders that even the most vigilant of guardians could be outwitted, that the cunning of the human heart knew few bounds. Such incidents would send ripples of fear through the entire palace, triggering purges, executions, and a renewed, almost frantic tightening of security. For the taster, these near misses would have been etched into their memory, a vivid, horrifying testament to the thin veil separating them from oblivion, deepening their resolve, or perhaps slowly eroding their spirit. The cost of such knowledge, the intimate understanding of poisons, must have weighed heavily on the taster. They held within them a dark library of sensations, a catalog of death in its most insidious forms. This knowledge, while essential for survival, was also a profound burden, a constant awareness of the fragility of life. Could they ever truly enjoy a meal, even in their personal moments, without that internal alarm bell, that analytical part of their mind, scrutinizing every flavor, every texture? Their very senses, once a gift, would have become a perpetual source of subtle torment, forever attuned to the potential for harm. Yet, amidst this profound burden, this constant dance with death, we might allow ourselves to wonder if there were moments of quiet respite, a glimmer of ordinary humanity. Did they ever dream of a life without fear, of a simple meal shared with loved ones, unburdened by the shadow of detection? Did they find solace in the beauty of the Roman world around them, in the artistry of the mosaics, the warmth of the Mediterranean sun, the quiet murmur of the city beyond the palace walls? Perhaps in those rare stolen moments of peace, they could almost forget their grim duty and simply be, but the quiet truth would always linger, a subtle bitterness on the tongue, a phantom sensation of danger that could never truly be washed away, for their lives were not entirely their own. They were a living extension of the emperor's breath, a silent, unwavering testament to the profound and enduring cost of power. And so, as the image of the Roman taster begins to soften, dissolving into the gentle mist of your thoughts, consider the quiet dignity of these forgotten figures. Their lives, often anonymous, leave a lingering echo, a quiet lesson from the past that transcends the grand narratives of emperors and empires. They remind us of the profound human cost of absolute power, the constant vigilance required to maintain it, and the quiet, often unacknowledged, sacrifices made in its name. They were the silent sentinels, standing guard not just against poison, but against the insidious erosion of trust itself. And as you drift deeper now, may you find peace in the knowledge that some brave souls once stood guard, allowing others to simply eat and to simply sleep, day after day, year after year, allowing others to simply eat and to simply sleep, while the shadows of unseen threats stretched long across the marble floors, even in the brightest midday sun. For the Roman Empire, for all its might and splendor, was a world constantly navigating the treacherous currents of human nature, a place where the grandeur of power often masked the deepest, most primal fears. The silent sentinel, the food taster, represented but one crucial layer in a complex web of imperial security, a testament to the lengths to which rulers would go to protect their precarious position. But what if the dangers extended beyond the plate, beyond the perfumed robes, and into the very fabric of the imperial city itself? Imagine now the bustling streets of Rome, a vibrant tapestry of life, clamor, and commerce. The Forum, alive with the debates of senators and the cries of merchants. The crowded taverns, filled with the laughter and chatter of citizens. The quiet back alleys, where shadows deepened and secrets whispered. In such a vast and intricate urban landscape, the emperor's life was not solely threatened by cunning poisoners within his palace. What if, we might softly ask, the danger lay in the very air he breathed, the water he drank from the great aqueducts, or the public spectacles he attended? The sheer scale of Rome, a city of 1,000,000 souls, offered countless hidden opportunities for those with malevolent intent. Could it be that some threats were far more subtle, more pervasive than a single poisoned meal? We know the Romans were masters of engineering, but also keenly aware of natural forces. What if a well, a public fountain, or even a section of the mighty aqueduct system could be subtly tainted, not with a swift-acting poison, but with a slow, debilitating agent designed to weaken the populace or specifically target the imperial household? The knowledge of geology and mineralogy, though rudimentary by modern standards, was not entirely absent. Certain natural springs, or mines, might yield substances that, introduced into a water supply, could cause chronic illness, lethargy, or even madness over time. For the emperor, this would be a threat, almost impossible to detect with a mere taster. It would require a vigilance that stretched across the entire city, a network of observers and specialists far beyond the palace walls. This expanded landscape of fear meant that the emperor's protection had to extend far beyond the immediate circle of his table. What kind of hidden networks, we might ponder, were deployed to safeguard the very environment of the imperial family? Perhaps there were specific officials tasked with inspecting the city's water sources, testing them not just for purity, but for any unusual taste or appearance. Or specialists who monitored the air quality in public spaces, searching for strange odors or vapors, especially during the humid Roman summers. These would be the unsung heroes, the unseen guardians of the city's delicate balance, their work obscured by the very success of their vigilance. Their methods, a blend of ancient observation and pragmatic caution, would have been a constant, quiet struggle against both natural and human-made threats. Consider the grand public spectacles, the gladiatorial games, the triumphal processions, moments of immense imperial display, but also moments of profound vulnerability. The emperor, exposed to tens of thousands of citizens, became a singular target amidst the roaring crowd. What measures were taken to protect him in these vast arenas? Not only would there be legions of Praetorian guards, their polished armor gleaming in the sun, forming an impenetrable cordon around the imperial box, but perhaps, too, a more subtle, unseen network of spies and informants, mingling among the throngs, listening for whispers of dissent. For any hint of a plot, their eyes would scan the faces in the crowd, searching for unnatural tension, for a sudden movement, for any sign of a hidden weapon or a projected dart. The celebratory atmosphere, designed to reinforce the emperor's divinity, was simultaneously a crucible of danger, demand the utmost vigilance from a hidden army of protectors. And then there were the more insidious, psychological threats, woven into the very fabric of Roman society: the power of rumor, the sting of satire, the subtle undermining of authority through gossip and innuendo. While not physically harmful, these could be just as deadly to an emperor's reign. slowly eroding public trust and legitimacy. What kind of quiet intelligence operations, we might wonder, were dedicated to monitoring these currents of public opinion, scribes and informers, blending into the background of bathhouses and marketplaces, collecting snippets of conversation, gauging the mood of the populace, feeding back crucial information to the palace. For an emperor, a loss of reputation could be as damaging as a poisoned meal, weakening his grasp on power and inviting rivals to challenge his rule. The battle for the emperor's life was not just fought with antidotes and tasters, but with information, with perception, and with the careful management of the public's fickle heart. This expansion of the threat, from the intimate space of the dining table to the vast expanse of the city, reveals a profound truth about imperial power. It was perpetually besieged, not just by external enemies, but by the very forces it sought to control. The emperor, despite his absolute authority, lived in a constant state of siege, his life a precious commodity, protected by layers of visible and invisible guardians. The food taster, then, was just one, albeit vivid, symbol of this overarching need for security, a single thread in a vast, intricate tapestry of imperial defense. Their unique sacrifice highlighted the personal vulnerability of the ruler, but it was set against a backdrop of myriad other, less dramatic, but equally vital protections. Could it be that this constant environment of suspicion and vigilance, this pervasive awareness of unseen dangers, subtly shaped the Roman character itself? Did it foster a sense of caution, a reliance on strong institutions, a certain stoicism in the face of uncertainty? Or did it, conversely, breed a quiet cynicism, a detachment from the grand pronouncements of power, knowing that beneath the marble facades and golden robes lurked a constant, gnawing fear? The Romans were renowned for their pragmatism, their ability to build and endure. Perhaps this relentless struggle against unseen threats, against both human malice and the subtle dangers of their environment, contributed to that very resilience, forcing them to be forever alert, forever adaptable. As the quiet darkness deepens around you, let your mind wander through these broader landscapes of imperial protection. From the single bite tasted by a silent sentinel to the vast network of vigilance safeguarding a sprawling city, the story of the Roman emperor's survival is one of intricate layers, of constant struggle against a multitude of threats, both seen and unseen. It reminds us that power, however absolute, is always a delicate balance, sustained not just by legions and laws, but by a continuous, quiet battle against the forces of decay, betrayal, and the ever-present shadow of the unknown. And in this ceaseless vigil, there was another kind of unseen guardian, a silent protector often overlooked, yet intimately connected to the very fabric of Roman life, the physician.